Okay, hello everyone. I am Chauncia, career coach, accountability coach, and author. And I am back with another video. And this video is going to be how to prepare for your exit. And when I say exit, I'm talking about exiting from one position to another. So I've been guided to do this one. I probably should have done it in order, like, step one in following into exit, but I've been guided to start here, so that must mean that someone needs to hear it. So we're going to go ahead and move forward. Now, any career coach who has done this for a very long time, even I think it's well known that you should stay on a job for at least 3 years before moving on to your next assignment. So I say all that to say you should start preparing for your exit the day you start on your current position. And then I'll get into that later on. But preparing for your exit is very important, because be mindful that where you are is not your forever place. That's not where you want to be. The goal is to take what you've learned, become the subject matter expert in your particular field, and you take what you've learned and move on to, a new position elsewhere. So once you become that subject matter expert, the question becomes, what signs should you look for to know when it's time for you to move on? And so this video is going to touch on those signs and when you should start or how to prepare for your exit. So let's start with the sign. Sign number one is, once you become that subject matter expert, you should start looking for your next position when you know how to do everybody's job in the office. That is a sign that it's time for you to find your next position. And I say that because for several reasons, once you become that subject matter expert and you know how to do everybody's job in the office, probably your boss and your boss's boss, outside of some administrative stuff such as time, signing time sheets and that type of thing, several things start to happen. Conflict starts to arise. And I say that because you have to start establishing boundaries for yourself, because you could become overworked. People may rely on you more for information, and it can become challenging to step back from certain duties because you feel as though you're taking on too much. If you are on a job where you do shift work, if so-and-so, a co-worker, decides they want to call out for the day, you might be that next go-to person on the list. Where do you draw the line and say, you know what, not today? Or if you're on a team and you might have a team member who may not know as much as you might have to, number one, train that person, which could also drain you, because it kind of slows down your day-to-day. Or you might have to, depending on how that person works, you might have to take up or complete the majority of a project or duties or assignments until they get the hang of things. And that can be draining, it can be challenging. If you notice that your ideas to improve bottlenecks. Bottlenecks are when it comes to processes, things that just don't work out, things fall through the crack. I'm sure everybody heard that term. You start to see where duties and responsibilities, where work falls through the cracks. Well, if you're coming up with suggestions that are not being taken into consideration and it causes more work for you, that might be a sign that it might be time for you to move on to your next position. If the workplace becomes unhealthy, where you're noticing all of these things and you're speaking up about it and your voice is not being heard, it can get a little combative. And when I say combative, I don't mean arguing, fussing, and fighting. I mean that you feel in conflict for speaking up for yourself. And that can turn into resentment and unnecessary stress. It's time for you to move on. Your workplace has become then unhealthy. Number 2, it is time to, once you become that subject matter expert, it's time to move on when you no longer feel challenged in your current position. If you are on a job and you have become numb or you feel like you're not learning anything, it's time to move on. You want to be in a place where learning is encouraged and you're learning something. We all, our brain is a computer. We always have to be in a state of learning something new, whether trainings or seminars and stuff that's going on. If you're not, and let me say this, if those things are offered or you have maxed out on those things as well, then it's time for you to go. It's time for you to be in an environment where you're learning new things and you're being challenged and you're growing in your qualifications and in your mental capabilities. Like it's encouraging you to think and to think outside of the box. If that's no longer happening, it's time for you to move on to a position where you are in it, you're able to do so. Number 3 is, once you become that subject matter expert, it is time for you to move on when you have reached a glass ceiling. And glass ceiling is where there's nowhere else for you to go. You have either maxed out on your salary, meaning you've earned, you're at the top of the earning bar in your office or in your work or wherever you are. You've maxed out. It means it's, you can't get no more money. The company can't afford you. I'll put it like that. The company can't afford you no more. Then what you gonna do? It's time for you to go. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. We all got responsibilities, and so if your responsibilities have maxed out what you're able to bring in on this particular position, it's time for you to go. It's nothing wrong with that. You are your best advocate in health, wealth, anywhere else. You are your best advocate. So if you have gained or you worked yourself up the ladder and there's nowhere else for you to go on that current position or environment, it's time for you to move on. It's time for you to go somewhere else where you're going to be challenged and there's more upward mobility. Number 4, and this kind of touches on number 1, is you're being overworked because of your skill level. Again, you're taking on the responsibilities of others. So that is a sign that it's time for you to move on to a position where you're going to be challenged. And it's always good to be in a position where you're learning from someone else too. no one person knows everything. And so to be on a job where you pretty much know everything, it can be a stressful feeling because the weight of the team or the crew, wherever you are, can be placed on you. And sometimes we stay in places and positions a little bit longer than we should because sometimes we might get an ego boost out of it. It's like, oh, they're not going to do this. And I've been there for this, that. And so when you start to think like that, maybe, it's time for you to go somewhere where you're the newbie, you get a new perspective and even new tools and techniques to do a job that you already familiar with, or you in a whole new environment doing a whole new skill altogether. So how do you prepare to make your exit? Mindset shift. Number one, you need to start being prepared to make your exit the first day you walk in there to do your current position. And I say that to say is because not to get comfortable. Do not get in your comfort zone, especially when you're young. You want to get in with the mindset of knowing I'm giving this position a certain amount of years. I'm going to get in here. I'm going to learn everything that I need to learn, and I'm going to take it elsewhere. So what does that look like in practice? Well, when you get in on your first day, you get familiar with what's going on, but when you go home, you start updating your resume. You put your new position and your new responsibilities on your resume. So that at any point in time where any of those things that I talked about earlier with a workplace being unhealthy, or you notice that you're being overworked, you're already prepared to start looking. Your resume is already updated to what you're doing now, your most current responsibilities or work accomplishments. So you always want to be in a mindset of not getting too comfortable, pushing yourself to learn new things so that you're updating your resume as you go. You want to always keep your resume up to date because anything can happen. And I'll touch on that as I continue to go on. Number two, how to prepare is you want to have a good rapport with everybody there as much as possible. Conflict does arise. You just have to learn and know how to effectively deal with conflict, and communication is key to that. But you want to make sure that you have a good rapport with the people that you work with, your bosses, your team leads, your managers. So reason being is if you have not watched the Do's and Don'ts of Office Politics video, you may want to watch that video. You want to be able to ask for a recommendation, a letter of recommendation, or a reference from your current position. If you have violated anything that I said on that Do's and Don'ts video, you might have some issues. I like to say, I want to leave on my feet and not on my butt. I want to walk out, not be thrown out. So keeping that in mind, I want to make sure that I'm building the best possible relationship with the people who can influence my next position. That said, when you do go in your interviews and you're filling out applications for your new position, put your references of people who you have a good rapport with, who can speak to your character. So that's the reason why you want to make sure that you're not gossiping about people. You not being disrespectful of your chain of command on your job. So those are just two things that I touched on that video. Go back, you can go back and check that out. That's still up. So we leaving on our feet, not on our butts. We got our recommendations. We developing a good rapport. We got our recommendations. We ain't got no problems with, giving such and such as a reference because me and such work well together. It was a very great and productive professional relationship. Okay. And so number 3, I recommend as you spend your 3 years on that position that you develop a portfolio for yourself. In that portfolio, you're going to include your letter of recommendation. You're going to include your updated resume. You're going to include any trainings, certificates, degrees, anything that you have earned, licenses, anything that you have earned on that current position. You're going to create a portfolio. And so that's what you're going to use when you go on your interview for your new position. So, like I said, I just want to sum up everything. We talked about the 3-year rule mindset is when you walk into your current position, you already got to be thinking ahead, already be thinking about what I can get out of where I am to take with me. What is the lesson? So I hope you've learned something, some techniques and some ideas of, how to prepare yourself and how to kind of navigate the workforce. So, all right, I think that's a beautiful way to close out this video. Take care.